So one of my favorite characters in scripture is Moses, and I know that I'm not alone in that. He's one of the most famous and biggest characters in the Bible. He holds a lot of space in people's hearts all over the world, especially in the Jewish community. Obviously, Moses being one of the, if not the most important character in the Bible other than God. So today I wanted to talk about him and maybe show him to you in a new light. So here is a picture of Moses that I actually got off the internet. That's not Moses. We'll go with it. Okay, never mind. So this is Green Lantern. In my mind, and I promise this will make sense in a second, so just hold on. Moses reminds me of Green Lantern. If you don't know who Green Lantern is, he is a DC Comics superhero that has a Green Lantern ring. Now, I'm going to show you a scene from a movie of the Justice League that will kind of give us some more context as to what I'm kind of thinking about when it comes to Moses, and we're going to dive into some scripture, so just hold on tight. Let's watch this. Here we go.
What? Nobody asked you to prom, so now you dress as a bat and prowl around your parents' basement?
What's this do?
Huh?
No buttons. I assume it works off concentration.
How'd you do that?
You weren't concentrating.
You won't do that again.
Unless I want to.
So that is a scene between Batman and Green Lantern. And what happens there is Batman takes Green Lantern's ring and he turns back into Hal Jordan, the normal old human that has no special powers whatsoever. But Batman obviously knows exactly what he's doing there. He's showing Green Lantern that, well, his power is located in his ring, and that without his ring, he's pretty much nothing. And Green Lantern knows that as well, so he gets pretty upset when Batman does that. So why does this remind me of Moses? Well, there's a couple of verses that I want to jump to that actually help us to explain some of this altogether. First, we're going to jump to Exodus, obviously one of the books that Moses is most known for here, the thing that he's most known for, the Exodus of the Israelites. So as we jump into this, let's give some context. Moses has obviously left Egypt. He's gone out into the wilderness. The Exodus has already happened. He's come back. He's freed his people, and they are now in the wilderness, but they're in need of a lot of different things, food and water and different things, and God is providing for them all over the place. But there's this one moment where this happens. So let's read through this. All the congregation of people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Pretty big problem. Therefore the people quarreled, and Moses said, "Give us water to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water. And the people grumbled against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord, "What shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." And the Lord said to Moses, "Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there at the rock of Horeb, at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water shall come out of it, and the people will drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because the quarreling of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord by saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So this is a huge passage within the Bible, and a huge passage from Moses in particular. Now, hey, real quick, if you're enjoying this type of content with breakdowns of The Chosen or our Israel content or deep dives into the Bible, we would really love your support over on patreon.com/thesnipelife. This is by far the best way to help us out, and it helps us to keep independent from YouTube, even when they decide not to show our content to anybody. So if you want to help out our ministry, this would be a great way to do it for only $5 a month. Thanks. For Moses in particular. Now, if we remember, God has Moses using this staff over and over and over again. At one point, the staff turns into a snake. If you've seen, the Prince of Egypt, you remember that scene there. Also, at one point, he puts the staff into the Nile and it turns to blood, right? There are so many moments where God uses this staff through Moses in order to perform these amazing things. Now, obviously, the staff is not God, and obviously Moses is not God. God is the one that holds the power and does these things, but he asks Moses specifically to use the staff. He tells Moses specifically that he is to use the staff to turn the Nile to blood. He is to use the staff to turn into a snake. He is to use the staff to hit the rock at Horeb. And so this reminds me of the Green Lantern. And I think there's something that we can learn through this as well. Moses uses the staff over and over and over again. He parts the Red Sea. He does all these miracles. God works through him in all these different ways, but it's always using the staff, or at least most of the time. And so Moses gets used to being used by God in this way. So what happens when God asks him to do something else? Let's jump into scripture again and let's talk about this. Now in Numbers chapter 20, we see almost a replication of the same scene that we saw previously, the waters of Meribah. Now we're back again where they have no water. So let's read through this scene here. Now there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. So they're mad at them again. And the people quarreled with Moses and said, Would that we had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord. Why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into the wilderness that we should die here, both we and our cattle? So a replay of what we saw earlier. And why have you made us come out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water to drink. Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. And the glory of the Lord appeared to them, and the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So what is God saying here? He says, take the staff, but I don't want you to use it. Listen again. He says, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, and tell the rock before their eyes to yield its water. So you shall bring water out of the rock for them and give drink to the congregation and their cattle. And Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he commanded him. Now, this isn't the end of the story, but we're seeing as God is setting this up. He says, take the staff with you, but I don't want you to use it. I want you to speak to the rock. I want you to tell the rock to yield its water. So let's see what happens. Verse 10, then Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly before the rock, and he said to them, Hear now, you rebels. Shall we bring water for you out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice. Now, previously, this is what God had asked him to do. He asked him to strike the rock with a staff. But this time, that's not what he asked him to do. Moses was not being obedient to God because he was so used to being used by God in a very specific way, right? But why is it that Moses wouldn't want to obey God in this moment? Well, we have to think back to the beginning of Moses' journey with God when he was at the burning bush. Remember that Moses over and over and over and over again is giving excuses to God as to why he can't be the one to lead the people out of Egypt. Why he can't be the one to lead the Israelites out of slavery. And one of the main reasons that he uses is that he is not good with his words, right? A lot of people believe that Moses had some sort of speech impediment, that he wasn't able to speak eloquently, that he didn't have the right words to say at the right time. Maybe he had a stutter, right? And then eventually God goes, okay, I'll have your brother Aaron speak for you, right? But you're still going to be the guy. You're still going to be the one to lead them out of Egypt, but Aaron is going to speak for you, right? So this is something that he's uncomfortable with, something that he is not ready to do, something that he is not prepared for. And yet God is asking him to use his voice, something that he is not wanting to do in order to help the people, in order to do what God asked him to do, in order to be obedient to God. But God also gives him a choice in that moment because he tells him to take the staff with him, right? He tells him, take the staff with you, but I want you to speak to the rock. So let's see what happens next. So he strikes the rock twice, and water came out abundantly, and the congregation drank, and their livestock. And the Lord said to Moses, because you did not believe in me to uphold me as holy in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land that I have given them. So Moses, the guy, right? The one that gets them out of Egypt, the one that is the leader of Israel, he doesn't even get to go to the promised land because he disobeyed God in this way. God wanted to show his glory and his majesty by Moses speaking to the rock. But Moses disobeys him and he hits the rock because that's what he's used to doing. So why am I even talking about this, right? What is the reason that I wanted to talk about Moses today? Well, I think that a lot of times, right, you and me act exactly as Moses is doing. I think a lot of times if we've had a relationship with God for a while, you get to the point where you're like, oh, God uses me in these 5 ways, and that's all that he can use me, right? He would never use me in these ways that are uncomfortable for me. He would only use me in these ways. And so my challenge to you as we read through this and understand who Moses is, right? Like we're not Green Lantern. Our power doesn't come from a staff or a ring. Our power comes from God. Our gifts and our talents and our well-being comes from God. And so as we think about that, remember that God can use you in any way that he sees fit, even in things that you're uncomfortable with, even in things that maybe you never thought you could do before. He may ask you to do that. He may ask you to be used in that way. Are you ready to obey him? Because I know for me, sometimes it's a struggle. It's a struggle when he asks me to do something that I really just don't want to do, or I'm just really uncomfortable with. Are you Moses? I guess sometimes that could be a really good thing. But in this circumstance, are you willing to obey Christ? Are you willing to obey God with everything that you have, no matter how he's used you previously, or no matter how you feel about how he's used you? Just something to think about.